Black nurse facing hospital cuts rescues man from drowning in southern statewide flooding. 7 days later, what happened next will shock you. Monica Daniels never thought her name would matter to anyone. She was just a black nurse working impossible shifts in a crumbling hospital, battling the weight of budget cuts and endless patient charts, trying to keep people alive in a system that barely kept the lights on. But on a night when the skies broke open and southern towns drowned under a flood no one was ready for, she heard screaming in the rain. She looked out across a street turned river and saw him, fighting for breath in black water choked with debris. Without even thinking, she dropped her bag and dove in. She didn't do it to be a hero. She did it because no one else would. And what she couldn't have known then was that 7 days later, that moment, those seconds that changed his life, would come back to change hers in ways she never dared imagine. Monica's shift had started like every other since the hospital announced the cuts, with exhaustion and fear. She arrived before sundown, the sky already bruised purple, and signed in at the front desk where a manager with bloodshot eyes tried not to look at her. 2 more nurses let go today, he mumbled as he handed her the chart. Monica blinked, her mouth dry. Anyone from our floor? He just shrugged. He didn't have the heart to say. She didn't ask again. She stepped into the ward. It was chaos. Beds in hallways, patients coughing behind thin curtains. A boy wailed for his mother. A woman on a gurney clutched a nurse's hand with desperate fingers. Monitors beeped in frantic, a rhythmic warning. Monica pushed back her hair and forced her voice calm. Ms. Garcia, you with me? Let's see how you're breathing. She adjusted an oxygen mask over the older woman's cracked lips, reading vitals even as the supervisor called her name from the other end of the corridor. Daniels. She jerked her head around. Patient in 8B is seizing. Go. She ran. By midnight, the rain had started to hammer the building in earnest. Water streaked down the glass in distorted rivers. Outside the main doors, the parking lot was already flooded halfway to the bumpers of old sedans. Inside, the air smelled of bleach, stale coffee, and fear. The hospital was a brittle skeleton of what it had been. They'd cut janitorial staff, so blood sometimes dried in the corners of rooms before anyone wiped it away. They'd cut transport staff, so nurses wheeled patients themselves, jostling them around debris and unplugged equipment they no longer used. Monica's arms ached from pushing. Her eyes burned. Her stomach hurt with hunger. She hadn't eaten since that morning. She couldn't risk taking a break. Last time she tried, the code alarm went off before she even opened the granola bar. At 1 a.m., they got the evacuation warning. Flash flood alerts blasted through every phone on the unit, loud enough to make the patients jump. A doctor switched the TV in the waiting room to the news. Statewide emergency declared. Entire southern region under flood watch. The anchor's voice was tight with forced calm as images rolled behind him. Water lapping at street signs, cars bobbing in torrents like broken toys. Monica watched for 3 seconds. Then she heard someone vomiting in the hall and ran to help. By 1:30, the power cut. A generator hummed to life with a sickly flicker. The old fluorescent lights dimmed, turning the whole hospital this queasy shade of orange. Monica changed scrubs for the second time that shift, after a child with pneumonia coughed blood all over her chest. She didn't have another pair. She tried to wash them in the utility sink, but the stains spread like a wound. She used paper towels to dab at it and gave up. She felt dirty. Not unclean, contaminated. But there was no time. Daniels. She turned. The head nurse's hair was falling out of her bun. Trauma coming in from the flooding. They're bringing people from the shelters. You're with me on triage. Monica nodded. No time to ask questions. They met ambulances at the back in trance, the wheels of stretchers sending up wakes in 4 inches of standing water. A paramedic yelled over the wind. Kid's hypothermic. Monica took the boy's icy hand. She could see his lips turning blue. She ran, shoes sloshing, cradling his head against her chest. Inside, she shouted for blankets. No one heard. She shouted again. A nurse tossed her a thermal foil wrap like it was a life preserver. She tucked it around him and held him, whispering stupid, soothing lies. It's okay. You're okay. I've got you. He coughed water onto her shoulder. She didn't flinch. By 2 o'clock, the hall was filled with evacuees on cots. Children cried. Old men groaned in pain. A woman screamed in labor because no one had the meds she needed. Monica moved from one to the next. doing what she could with too little. They'd cut their budget for supplies last month. So she improvised. She tore sterile tape in half to make it last. She used the same stethoscope for 4 patients without enough wipes in between. She told herself she was still helping. She checked her phone exactly once. A text from her neighbor. He fell asleep after asking if you're coming home. He says he loves you. Monica's throat tightened. Her vision blurred. She put the phone away without replying. By 2:30, the generator choked. The lights flickered. The room fell half into darkness. A child wailed in terror. Monica felt like joining him. She didn't. She turned on her pen light and kept working. At 3 a.m., she paused in the staff bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. She was 32, but looked 40. Hair matted to her scalp. Eyes bloodshot. Scrubs still damp. The stain on her chest was a dull brown splotch she couldn't scrub out. She laughed once, a small bitter sound. Then she slapped cold water on her face and went back out. She didn't even bother asking if she could go home. She knew the answer. At 4 a.m., they brought in another wave of evacuees. A man on a makeshift stretcher coughed so hard he vomited water onto the floor. Monica helped lift him, her back screaming in protest. She pressed his wrist to feel a pulse. Too fast. Dehydrated, maybe septic. She barked instructions to a junior nurse without checking if she'd listened. She was too tired to care if she sounded mean. By 5 o'clock, the hospital floor was swampy with tracked-in water. Mud and blood mixed in brown puddles. Monica's shoes squeaked with every step. They were down 3 more nurses who couldn't get through the flooding. Monica picked up their patients without question. She charted on the fly, scrawling messy notes she'd try to decipher later. She forgot to eat. Again. By 5:30, the wind outside screamed like a living thing. Windows rattled. The generator rattled with them. Monica heard a crash in the lobby. A tree limb through the glass. No time. She heard her name called over the intercom. Daniels to the front entrance immediately. She wiped her hands on her ruined scrubs and went. She never saw the man outside at first. She saw the rain. She heard the wind. She heard the floodwaters rushing down what used to be the street. And she heard screaming. Real, raw, desperate screaming. Someone shouting for help. Her heart stuttered. She stepped outside, blinking into the storm. Lightning lit the scene for one terrifying moment. There he was. A man, swept against a half-submerged street sign, arms thrashing. The current dragged at him, debris swirling like knives. He slipped under once. Twice. Monica's hands shook. She could barely stand. She was so tired. But she didn't think. She dropped her bag, kicked off her soaked shoes, and ran straight into the water. Because that's what she did. No matter what it cost her. No matter how alone she was. No matter how many people would forget her name. She saved lives. Even if no one ever saved hers. Monica didn't even feel the water at first. Her heart was pounding too hard, adrenaline flooding her system as if to match the storm around her. The cold bit her legs as she waded and up to her thighs, pushing against a current that was alive, writhing, pulling, hungry. She held her arms out for balance, slipping once on something that might have been a parking block or might have been someone's trash can wash from a yard. Lightning flashed again, etching the scene in electric white. He was there, clawing at the stop sign he was wedged against. Water surged over his chest, lifting him and slamming him back. He was screaming hoarsely, but his voice cracked into wet choking as he swallowed water. Monica forced her legs to move. Every step was war. The current grabbed her calves and tried to spin her sideways. She lowered her center of gravity the way she'd practiced years ago in lifeguard training she'd thought she'd never need again. The wind howled like an animal. Debris skidded and slammed into her. A floating trash bin bounced off her hip. Pain flared, but she didn't let herself react. She was focused only on him. He went under. No, she shrieked, but the wind stole the sound. She lunged forward, water up to her chest now, one hand outstretched. He bobbed back up, sputtering, clawing weakly. Hold on, she yelled, spitting rain. His eyes met hers for a second, wide, wild, terrified. That was enough. He grabbed at her hand. The current ripped at them both. She felt his fingers sliding. She screamed and tightened her grip. Hold on to me. A wave crashed over them. She went under for half a second, mouth filling with dirty water, eyes burning. She came up coughing, but she still had his wrist. He was heavy, panicked, thrashing. Stop fighting me, she yelled hoarsely. He gagged and went limp. That was worse. She wrapped her arm around his chest from behind. She braced her feet against the pavement she could barely feel and turned them slowly, carefully, dragging them out of the worst of the current. She was screaming inside her head the whole time. Don't lose him. Don't lose him. Don't lose him. The water felt like claws on her skin, grabbing and tearing, freezing her muscles. She bit down hard enough on her lip to taste blood just to stay awake. When they finally hit a submerged curb, she nearly fell. Her knee slammed against concrete. She cried out. Her fingers were numb. She tried to haul him up. He was too heavy. He slid back. No! She screamed it. She shifted behind him, planted both feet, and pushed. He rolled enough to catch on the curb. She clawed at his jacket collar, dragging, pulling, ignoring the ripping sound of fabric and the pain in her shoulders. Her lungs burned. She couldn't breathe. Everything was black except for his face, slack and pale in the lightning. Not today. She wouldn't let him die today. Finally, they were clear of the water's main pull. She collapsed over him, coughing so hard she thought she'd vomit. She rolled him over onto his side. Water gushed from his mouth. He coughed weakly. Monica sobbed. She wasn't even sure when she started. She pressed her fingers to his neck. There, fluttering. Fast. But there. Stay with me, she gasped. His eyes flickered. White. Scared. Confused. She could hear sirens in the distance. She wanted to lie down and sleep forever. Instead, she sat back on her knees, shaking, watching him gag and spit water onto the soaked asphalt. Rain hammered them both. Monica wiped her eyes. It didn't help. She couldn't tell tears from rain anymore. When the paramedics arrived, the floodwaters were still roaring down the street like an angry river. 2 EMTs jumped down from the truck in waterproof jackets, yelling over the wind. They saw Monica bent over the man. Move. Let's get him on the board. She obeyed. Hands shaking, arms burning with spent adrenaline, she moved aside. They worked quickly, checking vitals, rolling him onto a stretcher. Ma'am, are you hurt? Monica blinked at them. She couldn't even process the question. Ma'am, you're bleeding, one said. She looked down. Her scrubs were ripped at the hip. Blood mingled with rain, but it didn't even hurt anymore. I'm fine, she croaked. Let us check you. I work at the hospital. The EMT paused. Recognition. Pity. Respect. He just nodded. They loaded the man into the ambulance. Monica watched the doors close. She felt empty. Her heart was racing so hard she thought it would break her ribs. She staggered back a step. She wanted to sit down. She wanted to go home. She wanted a hot meal and her son's arms around her neck. But the hospital door was right there. Light glowed from the lobby in sickly, flickering orange. She could see her supervisor at the window, watching her. She felt the judgment even from here. Late again, Daniels. Monica forced herself to turn. She picked up her ruined bag from where she'd dropped it in the mud. Her shoes floated 10 feet away. She didn't even bother trying to get them. She limped barefoot through the cold, flooded lot, and pushed open the door. Inside, the smell of bleach and sickness slapped her in the face. People turned to stare. Her hair was plastered to her face. She was shivering violently, clothes stuck to her in wet rags. The head nurse's voice cut through the lobby. Daniels, where the hell have you been? Monica blinked slowly. Her teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. Pulled someone out. The woman's eyes narrowed. Out where? Monica's breath sawed in and out. Flood Street. He was drowning. Did you get yourself hurt? Monica looked down at her hip. Blood still dripped, pink in the fluorescent light. She shook her head. The nurse scoffed. We're down 3 tonight because of this goddamn storm and you're out playing hero? Get changed. Now. Monica's mouth worked. Nothing came out. She swallowed hard and nodded. She shuffled to the staff bathroom. She peeled off her scrubs. Her fingers were so numb she dropped them twice. Blood oozed from the scrape on her side. She grabbed paper towels and pressed them to it. The pain was sharp, bright, almost welcome. She cleaned it as best she could and tugged on the spare pair of scrubs from her locker. They were 2 sizes too big, faded, the elastic gone in one cuff. Didn't matter. She was back on the floor 5 minutes later. The first patient she saw was a child coughing blood into a tissue. Monica pushed everything else away. She pressed a cool hand to the little girl's forehead. Sure, honey. I'm here. She smiled. It cracked her chapped lips. She didn't care. Hours blurred. Evacuees from the flooding kept coming. An old woman with hypothermia. A man with a head wound from falling debris. A pregnant teen crying she didn't want to give birth tonight. Monica moved room to room, bed to bed, checking pulses, administering meds, holding hands, saying, "You're okay. I'm here." Her supervisor barked orders. Monica obeyed. She didn't even hear the words half the time. She just moved. Her arms felt like they'd been filled with lead. Her eyes burned. Her stomach was a cavern of hollow pain. She ignored it all. When the shift change finally came at dawn, the nurse meant to replace her was stuck in flood traffic. Monica didn't ask to go home. She just kept going. By the time the sun actually rose, gray and dull behind the cloud cover, she was checking charts with shaking hands. She didn't remember half of what she'd written. She didn't care. Just one more hour. One more patient. Just keep going. She didn't think of the man she'd pulled from the water. She didn't let herself. That part was over. He was alive. That was all that mattered. She didn't expect to see him again. She didn't expect anything. She was Monica Daniels, a nurse no one remembered, invisible, exhausted, but refusing to stop, because that was the job. Monica fell onto the sidewalk beside him, her knees slamming into cold concrete slick with rain. She let out a raw, gasping sob, then forced her body forward, crawling the last foot to the man's side. He lay half on his back, half twisted onto his side, water streaming from his mouth, eyes closed, skin pale and waxy in the flash of lightning. Come on, she rasped, voice ragged from screaming into the wind. She pressed her fingers to his throat. Nothing. Her heart thundered so violently she felt dizzy. No. She shook her head, as if to physically deny what she'd felt, or not felt, beneath her fingers. She adjusted her grip, feeling again. There. Faint. Freddy. But there. Relief hit her so hard, she let out a strangled laugh, tears mingling with the relentless rain. Okay, she whispered. Okay, stay with me. He coughed once, a wet, gurgling sound that made bile rise in her throat. Water streamed from his lips. She turned him fully onto his side, letting gravity help clear his airway. He convulsed, hacking up more water, spit, something dark she didn't want to think about. Monica didn't flinch. She had seen worse. Her hand rubbed his back in small, firm circles, the motion automatic. That's it. Breathe. Don't you dare die on me now. Another weak cough. Then a ragged, shuddering breath. She closed her eyes for a second. Thank you, God. She pulled in a breath that rattled her chest, trying to steady her own shaking hands. Somewhere down the block, sirens wailed. Red and blue light danced across the swirling floodwaters. Monica didn't even look up. Her whole focus was on him. He wasn't really conscious. His eyes fluttered under wet lashes, but they didn't focus. His mouth worked soundlessly. She leaned in closer. I've got you. You're okay. Help's coming. She pressed her palm lightly to his chest. His soaked shirt clung to surprisingly expensive-looking fabric underneath. A dress shirt, tailored, ruined by mud and blood and rain. Who the hell wears a suit in a flood? It didn't matter. He was breathing. That was all she cared about. The EMTs arrived like an answer to prayer. 2 men in rain gear jumped from the back of the ambulance, boots splashing in standing water. One carried a bag, the other a board. Is he breathing? The first shouted over the wind. Just started. Monica screamed back. Vitals. Freddy pulse. Weak respirations. They converged on the man. Monica moved back automatically, giving them space even as she felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. He had been hers to save, if only for a moment. The taller EMT met her eyes, recognizing her scrubs even though they were soaked and bloodied. You a nurse? Monica nodded, hair plastered to her face. Get inside before you go hypothermic, he barked, not unkindly. She didn't argue. She just watched them work. They cut away the man's ruined jacket and shirt, stuck electrodes to his pale chest, started in 4, talked in clipped code Monica's exhausted brain barely processed. Then they loaded him onto the board and lifted him, their boots sloshing. The man let out a weak moan, head lolling. Monica felt something in her chest loosen. Alive. He was going to make it. One of the EMTs turned back to her. You hurt. She blinked at him. What? You're bleeding. Monica looked down at herself. Blood had mixed with rain into long pinkish streaks down her leg from a tear in her scrubs. Oh, she flexed experimentally. It burned, but it was superficial. I'm fine. He didn't look convinced. You work in there? He asked, jerking his chin at the hospital. She nodded again. He just shook his head. Get yourself checked out. He didn't wait for her answer. He turned and followed his partner into the back of the rig, slamming the doors shut. A second later, the siren blared to life. The ambulance pulled away, water churning under its wheels. Monica stood there for a moment, watching the taillights vanish into the driving rain. She realized she was shivering violently. Her teeth clacked so hard she bit her tongue. She could barely feel her fingers. Rain streamed off her nose. Her chin dripped from her eyelashes. Her hair was a dark, tangled mat against her scalp. She reached for her bag where it lay half submerged in a filthy puddle. It weighed twice as much, filled with water. Her phone was probably ruined. Her shoes were gone, lost somewhere in the street. She didn't even bother looking. Barefoot, she limped toward the hospital entrance. Inside was another world. Warm, bright. It smelled of antiseptic and worry. People turned and stared. She was soaked to the bone, bloodied, hair wild. She could feel their eyes on her, their questions. She didn't care. She just wanted to change. She just wanted to work. But of course it wasn't that simple. Daniels. The supervisor's voice cracked across the lobby like a whip. Monica winced. She turned slowly. The woman's face was pinched and furious. Where the hell have you been? Monica opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. She had to swallow hard before she managed words. Outside, a man was drowning. The supervisor's eyes narrowed. In the middle of your shift? Monica's lip trembled. She bit it hard enough to taste blood. I couldn't just let him die. The older woman sneered. Always the hero, huh? While the rest of us pick up your slack. Monica recoiled like she'd been slapped. She couldn't even think of a response. She felt small, cold, exposed. Go change, the supervisor snapped. Now, you're scaring the patients. Monica's eyes burned. But she didn't cry. She just nodded. She shuffled to the staff bathroom. Peeling off the soaked scrubs felt like tearing off a layer of skin. They slapped onto the floor with a wet thud. She caught sight of herself in the cracked mirror. Mud smeared on her face. Hair like seaweed. Eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Blood trickled from a gash on her hip. She grabbed paper towels and pressed them to the wound. It hurt. She welcomed it. She didn't have time to shower. She barely had time to breathe. She scrubbed her face at the tiny sink, managing to remove some of the grime. She found a spare set of scrubs in her locker, too big and faded, elastic gone at one ankle. Didn't matter. She pulled them on, ignoring the way they clung damply to her skin. She tied her hair back with trembling fingers. She couldn't feel them anymore. When she stepped back out into the hall, people pretended not to stare. She walked with her head down. She made it back to the desk. Where do you want me? She whispered. The head nurse didn't even look at her. ER overflow. Triage. We're drowning. Monica nodded. Of course they were. She went. She worked. She triaged evacuees with eyes too wide and mouths too dry to answer questions. Children with hypothermia. Old men coughing up water. A teenager sobbing in terror because her mother hadn't made it onto the boat with her. Monica moved from one to the next, bandaging wounds, checking pulses, taking vitals, holding hands when there was nothing else to do. Her hands shook. She couldn't stop shivering. Her teeth chattered. But she kept working. She didn't think of him. The man in the flood. She didn't let herself. He was someone else's patient now. Someone else's responsibility. She had enough. More than enough. But hours later, as she finally sank onto a plastic chair for 2 stolen minutes of rest, her mind betrayed her. She saw his face again. Pale. Eyes rolling back. Water pouring from his mouth. She heard herself screaming. Hold on to me. She felt his weight dragging her down. She felt the terror of losing him. She felt the wild relief when he breathed. Monica pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting tears. She couldn't afford them. Not here. Not now. She took one more breath, stood up, and went back to work. Because that was what she did. What she always did. Even if no one ever said thank you. Even if no one ever remembered her name. Monica didn't remember much about the hours after she changed into her second set of scrubs. She remembered shivering so hard she thought her teeth would crack. She remembered the cold that settled in her bones and refused to leave. And she remembered the smell, bleach, blood, wet clothes, fear. The smell of a hospital during a crisis, when everyone was just trying to keep the doors open and the patients breathing. She went back to triage because that's where they needed her. That's where they always needed her. Half the ER had flooded overnight. They'd thrown down towels, mops, anything they could find to soak it up, but the water still oozed in under the doors. The floor was slick with mud and blood tracked in from the street. Someone had slapped a yellow caution sign in the middle of it, like that was supposed to help. Monica didn't have time to laugh at the absurdity. A paramedic pushed in a stretcher with a boy no older than 7. Hypothermic. Blue lips, eyes fluttering. Monica's heart lurched. She hurried forward, checking vitals, barking for warm blankets that didn't exist. She had to settle for cranking the heat up in the exam room and wrapping him in her own arms, whispering to him to hold on. He cried weakly into her chest, his tears hot compared to her freezing skin. She didn't even know when her own tears started. Next was an elderly woman with a gash on her scalp, blood matting gray hair. She apologized the entire time Monica cleaned her wound. "Don't say sorry," Monica whispered, voice cracking. The woman squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. "I didn't mean to be a bother," she said again, voice small. Monica wanted to scream. She didn't. She just bandaged the cut, gave the woman water, and told her she was safe now. It went like that for hours. No breaks. No food. No time. By dawn, the worst of the flooding had pulled back, leaving behind debris, mud, and ruined cars abandoned in intersections. But the hospital was still full. People with pneumonia from cold exposure. People with lacerations from broken glass. People who had nowhere else to go because their homes were underwater. Monica moved among them, her name a constant mantra on the intercom. Daniels to triage. Daniels to exam 3. Daniels to supply. She didn't argue. She just went. Once, she paused at the nurse's station, head spinning. Her vision narrowed to a gray tunnel. She gripped the counter so hard her knuckles whitened. A junior nurse noticed. "Monica, you okay?" She nodded once, curt. "Fine. You're shaking. Cold. Let me get you a blanket." "No time." And she pushed off the counter and kept going. Because there was no time. The generator sputtered again around noon. The lights dimmed and flickered. Someone cuss it. Monica didn't even look up. She finished wrapping a gash on a man's leg with shaking hands. When she was done, the man grabbed her wrist. "Thank you," he said, eyes wet. She blinked at him, nodded, didn't trust her voice, and moved on. Around 2 p.m., they brought in more evacuees from a nursing home that had flooded overnight. Staff had stayed with them all night, but now those staff were soaked, shivering, and injured themselves. Monica didn't have the resources. No enough beds. Not enough warm blankets. Not enough hands. She moved people in shifts, checking vitals, starting IVs, wiping tears. "Please," one nurse begged her. "I'm trying," Monica whispered. At one point she heard someone in admin say, "We might have to turn people away." Monica wanted to vomit. She didn't even know if it was policy. She didn't care. She kept working. By late afternoon, the sun was out, but the air was freezing. Steam rose off wet pavement outside. Inside, the heat was out in half the building. They passed out space heaters from storage, rationing them to the sickest patients. Monica wore a threadbare hoodie over her scrubs, shivering, nose red. She didn't remember where she got it. She sat for maybe 2 minutes all day. When she did, she slumped against the wall, eyes closed. A janitor pushing a mop paused. "You good?" She cracked one eye. "Yeah." He nodded once. "I'm gonna clean this blood before someone sues us." She managed a weak laugh. He winked. "Hang in there." She nodded again. That was the only kindness she got all shift. Because the supervisor was waiting. As soon as Monica tried to check out, the older woman intercepted her with a clipboard. "You're on tonight, too." Monica blinked. "I what?" "I just did." The supervisor held up a hand. "Half the night shift can't get through the flooding. We need you." Monica's lips trembled. She looked down at her ruined shoes, mud drying on the soles. Her toes were numb. "I haven't slept." "You'll nap in the break room." "There's no room in there." "Not my problem." Monica felt something in her chest crack. She didn't even try to argue. She just nodded. She went to the break room. It was full of nurses already. Some snoring on the floor. Some crying. Some staring at nothing. She found a sliver of floor between a vending machine and the trash can. She curled up on her side, knees to chest. She didn't take off her hoodie. Didn't even untie her hair. She closed her eyes and let the exhaustion swallow her. She dreamed of water. Black water. Rising. Swallowing everything. She dreamed of his face, pale and still. Of her own voice screaming, "Hold on to me." She woke when someone kicked her foot, Daniels, you're up. She blinked blearily at the speaker. The head nurse again. Monica struggled upright, wincing as her back cracked. Her eyes felt glued shut. Her mouth tasted like ash. She licked dry lips. Give me a second. You don't have a second. She forced herself to stand. She swayed, grabbed the vending machine for balance. It rattled ominously. The nurse watched with pursed lips. You're going to drop dead one day. Monica let out a wet laugh. Probably. She staggered to the locker room, washed her face in ice-cold water, changed into the only other set of scrubs she had, still damp from yesterday. She didn't even care. When she got back to the floor, there was a fresh wave of patients. Evacuees returning because their houses were full of mold. People with coughs that rattled ominously. A child with burns from an overturned propane heater. Monica didn't think. She just worked. Because that's what she did. Because no one else was going to. Because if she stopped moving, she would shatter. Somewhere during the second shift, she passed a TV in the waiting room. News footage showed destroyed homes, families crying, relief agencies trying to organize donations. Her eyes caught on one image, a street she recognized. Flooded, silent, empty. She thought of the man she'd pulled from the water. Where was he now? Did he even remember her face? Did he care? She forced the thought away. It didn't matter. He was alive. That was enough. Because Monica Daniels had learned the hard way that sometimes enough was all you got. And you took it. She kept working, kept saving who she could, ignored the budget cuts, ignored the rumors of more layoffs, ignored the supervisor who kept telling her to be faster, more efficient, more professional while she was bleeding through her scrubs. Because she was a nurse. And that was what nurses did. Even if no one noticed. Even if no one cared. Even if no one would remember her name. A week passed. 7 days of water receding and leaving behind mud, debris, and ruined lives. 7 days of Monica Daniels working shifts so long she stopped bothering to count them. 7 days of washing the same 2 sets of scrubs every night in the staff sink and hanging them on the radiator in the break room so she'd have something dry in the morning. 7 days of trying not to think about the flood, trying not to remember his face as he slipped under, trying not to hear her own voice screaming, "Hold on to me." Trying not to imagine what would have happened if she'd been 1 second slower. The hospital was quieter, technically. The worst of the flood evacuees had been sent home or moved to shelters. But quieter didn't mean better. Quieter just meant every problem left behind was harder to ignore. The mold in the ER ceiling. The broken gurney they'd propped against the wall because there was no money to fix it. The med fridge that buzzed so loud it rattled her skull. The fact that the hospital administrator hadn't been seen in 3 days, but his emails kept coming. Reminders to cut overtime, reduce waste, and maintain a professional attitude. Monica didn't bother reading them anymore. She didn't have time. She showed up early, just to sit in the locker room with her eyes closed for 10 blessed minutes before her shift started. She drank stale coffee from a stained thermos because the cafeteria was out of milk. She wrapped her freezing hands around the paper cup just to feel something warm. She thought of her son, who she hadn't tucked in for a week. Her neighbor sent daily updates. "He's fine. He misses you. He said to tell you he loves you." Monica sent back hearts she didn't have the energy to feel. She didn't sleep anymore so much as black out in fits on the break room floor. She started leaving a rolled-up hoodie there to use as a pillow. No one touched it. Everyone respected a nurse's pillow in this war zone. She caught rumors in snatches. That the county was sending inspectors. That they might shut the place down if they didn't get funding. That there would be more layoffs soon, despite the disaster. That the administrator had lined up interviews at a bigger hospital in the city. None of it surprised her. One morning, she was taping in 4 to a teenager's arm when she overheard the head nurse muttering to the social worker. "We're so short-staffed I had to ask Daniels to take another double." Monica didn't react. She focused on the vein under her fingers, willing it to hold. The social worker clicked her tongue. "That woman's going to kill herself for this place." "Yeah. She got a raise yet?" A short, sharp laugh. "You kidding?" The tape tore under Monica's fingers. She fixed it automatically. She didn't say anything. She didn't have the energy to be angry anymore. By the 5th day after the flood, the water line on the outside of the hospital was just a brown stripe in the brick. Like a scar. Inside, the smell of mildew was creeping in, no matter how much they mopped. Monica caught her supervisor spraying Febreze in the lobby. She bit her tongue to keep from laughing. Patients trickled in with coughs, rashes, infections from wading in contaminated water. Monica treated them all. She washed her hands so many times the skin cracked and bled. She taped over the cuts and kept going. She didn't think about the man she'd saved. Didn't let herself. It was too raw, too personal. He was gone. He hadn't even looked at her when the EMTs loaded him up. That was fine. She didn't save people for thank yous. She saved them because she was there. Because no one else was. By day 6, things were bad. Supplies were low. No one from admin had approved any new orders yet. They reused gloves until they snapped. They rationed gauze. They made do with off-brand antiseptic that smelled like turpentine. Monica's supervisor walked around with a clipboard, scowling. Short on insulin. Daniels, find out who can skip doses. Monica stared. Excuse me. The woman didn't blink. You heard me. Monica clenched her jaw until her teeth hurt. She didn't argue. She just walked away. In the break room that night, she sat on the floor against the washing machine with another nurse, Sierra. Sierra lit a cigarette she wasn't supposed to have. The tiny room filled with the sharp, acrid smell. Monica didn't even complain. She just let the smoke sting her eyes. You hear they're cutting for more next week, Sierra said, voice dull. Monica didn't answer. They're gonna fire me. Monica glanced over. Sierra's eyes were red. I got 3 kids, she whispered. Monica reached over and squeezed her hand. They sat in silence. The next day, she found the head nurse at the computer, red-faced with fury. They cut our overtime again. Monica blinked. But we're all on doubles. Doesn't matter. They can't. Check your check this week, Daniels. You'll see. Monica did. She almost threw up. Rent was due in 2 days. She didn't know if she could pay it. She worked anyway. What else was she supposed to do? By the 7th day after the flood, the hospital felt like a tomb. People spoke in hushed voices. Monitors beeped in the dark like distant heartbeats. Outside, the sky was clear but the air was cold. The news was all about damage estimates, FEMA aid, rebuilding. No one mentioned the hospital. No one cared. Monica was charting in the nurse's station at 10 p.m. when she heard it. The squeal of expensive tires on ruined asphalt. The slam of car doors. She looked up. 2 men in dark suits were standing in the lobby, dripping water from their polished shoes. They were clean, pressed, completely out of place. They looked around with faint distaste, like they could smell the mildew. Monica frowned. No one visited here unless they had to. The head nurse stormed over. Can I help you? One of them smiled politely. We're looking for Monica Daniels. Her heart skipped. She felt every eye in the room turn to her. She swallowed. That's me. The other man smiled too. But it wasn't warm. It was professional. Practiced. Ms. Daniels. Good. We've been instructed to find you. She felt her palms go cold. Instructed? They didn't answer. They just extended a white envelope toward her. She didn't take it at first. She was too busy looking at them. At their suits. At their expensive shoes caked with hospital grime. At the way they didn't seem to fit here at all. Finally, she forced her arm to move. She took the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. Sealed with a thick wax stamp she didn't recognize. She felt everyone watching her. The head nurse. The janitor. Other patients on gurneys. Everything went silent. Monica's mouth was dry. She cleared her throat. Can I help you with anything else? The taller man smiled slightly. No, Ms. Daniels. That will be all. They turned in perfect unison and walked back out into the night. She stood frozen. The envelope in her hand felt like it weighed 10 pounds. The head nurse glared. Don't just stand there. We've got patients. Monica blinked. She tucked the envelope into her pocket. She didn't open it. Not yet. She turned away, her heart hammering so hard she felt dizzy. She went back to work, but her fingers trembled around every bandage. Her eyes flicked to the pocket over and over. She didn't know what was in it. She didn't know who sent it. But she had a feeling. A wild, terrible, impossible feeling. That it was about him. Monica stuffed the envelope into her scrub pocket and forced herself to move. She cleaned a wound on an old man's leg, hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the gauze. He watched her with rheumy eyes. You okay, nurse? She nodded automatically. I'm fine, she lied. She wasn't fine. Her mind was screaming at her to look, to rip it open, to see what was inside. But the line at triage was still full. The cries for help hadn't stopped. And she was Monica Daniels. She didn't get to stop, either. Hours passed before she got a second alone. It was well past midnight. The hall had gone quiet except for the slow beeping of monitors and the shush of respirators. The smell of bleach was fading under the stronger smell of old sweat and damp clothes. Monica sat on a folding chair in the corner of the nurse's station, the envelope in her lap. She ran her thumb over the wax seal. It felt out of place here. Too heavy. Too real. She glanced around. No one was watching. She exhaled and broke it. Inside was a thick sheet of paper, cream-colored, heavy as a wedding invitation. Monica unfolded it with trembling fingers. The words were handwritten in dark ink. Ms. Daniels, you don't know me, but you saved my life. I don't remember much. I know I was drowning. I know I was gone. And then you were there. I know you pulled me out. I know you didn't let go. They told me your name later. That you went right back to work after. That you didn't even wait to see if I lived. You did that for me. For no reason but that you were there. And because of that, I have another chance. I can't repay you. Not really. But I want to try. Please accept what's inside this envelope as a first gesture. It is not the end. It is only the beginning. We will speak soon. Thank you. Alexander Grant. She read it 3 times before she realized she was crying. Tears hit the page and smeared the ink. She wiped them away with shaking fingers. Alexander Grant. She knew the name. Everyone in town did. A billionaire. Real estate. Energy. Tech. He was on the news once for donating a wing to the children's hospital across the state. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be in this dying town, in the flood, drowning in the dark while she screamed at him not to die. But he had been, and she had saved him. Her breath hitched. She pressed the paper to her chest. Then she remembered there was more inside. Hands trembling, she reached in. A check fell out. It fluttered to the floor and landed face up. She stared at the numbers. She stopped breathing. 5 zeros. She blinked hard, sure she was hallucinating. She picked it up. The name on the line was hers. It was real. Monica Daniels. She let out a choked sob. She slammed the check and let her back into the envelope so hard it crumpled. She buried it in her scrub pocket and curled in on herself. Her forehead dropped to her knees. She let the tears come then, silent and ugly. No one was around to see. She cried for the exhaustion, for the hopelessness, for the rent notice at home taped to her mirror, for the phone calls she hadn't returned, for her son asking when she was coming home, for the nurses she worked with who were next on the chopping block. For all of it, she cried until she couldn't, until she felt empty. Finally, she wiped her face with the back of her hand and stood up. She had patience. She didn't tell anyone about the envelope. She didn't even dare look at it again. She finished her shift in a daze. She went home when the sun was already up, blinking like a mole as she trudged through the ruined streets. Her neighbor met her at the door with her son, who launched himself into her arms. She staggered under his weight, clutching him so tight he squealed. "Mommy, hi, baby. You're wet." She let out a breathy laugh that was more sob. "I know." She handed him back to the neighbor with a whispered thank you and went inside. She shut the door behind her, collapsed onto her couch, fell asleep without even taking off her shoes. She dreamed of drowning. The next night, she was back at work. Because of course she was. They were still short. The head nurse barely even looked at her. "Room 5 is yours. Don't screw it up." Monica nodded once and went. Her pocket was heavy with the envelope. She felt it with every step, like it was burning a hole in her scrubs. 2 days later, she was called to the head nurse's office. She knocked once, listless. "Come in." The head nurse didn't even glance up from the computer. "You got visitors." Monica blinked. "What?" "They're in the conference room." Monica's heart skipped. "Who?" The woman finally looked at her, raised an eyebrow. "Don't know. Don't care. They asked for you by name." Monica's legs felt like lead as she walked down the hall. Her sneakers squeaked on the cheap linoleum. She paused at the conference room door, took a breath, opened it. Inside sat 2 men in suits she recognized from a week ago, and another man she didn't. He stood when she entered. He was tall, impeccably dressed even here, in this grim little room. But he looked tired, older than on TV, lines around his mouth, shadow under his eyes. He smiled. Monica froze. "Ms. Daniels," he said, voice low and warm. She swallowed. "Mr. Grant." He nodded once. "Thank you for coming." She tried to speak. Nothing came out. He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." She did, slowly. Her knees cracked. She folded her hands in her lap to hide the tremor. He sat too, leaning forward. For a moment, no one spoke. She could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Outside, someone paged a doctor over the intercom. He cleared his throat. "I wanted to see you in person." She blinked at him. He continued, voice softer. "You saved my life." She swallowed again. Her throat hurt. "I was just there." He shook his head. "Plenty of people were there. You're the only one who jumped in." Monica looked down. Her fingers twisted in her lap. She felt tears prickling again. She willed them back. He watched her for a long moment. Then he reached into his breast pocket and pulled out another envelope. He slid it across the table. She didn't move to take it. He spoke gently. "I sent you something before." It was the small gesture. Monica let out a strangled laugh. "It wasn't small." He smiled sad. "Compared to what you gave me? It was." He leaned back, exhaling. "I was here to assess damage for one of my companies. I shouldn't have been in that part of town. I got lost. My driver panicked. I told him to go ahead. I thought I could get out on foot." He rubbed his eyes. "I was an idiot." Monica shook her head. "No. It was the flood." He lowered his hand. "Whatever it was, you didn't have to save me." She met his eyes. Dark. Wounded. Grateful. She shrugged helplessly. "I'm a nurse." He smiled at that. "Exactly." Silence fell again. Finally, he gestured at the envelope. "I want you to take that." She swallowed. "I can't." "You can." "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's gratitude." She pressed her lips together. He waited. Finally, she reached out. Took it. It was heavier than before. He cleared his throat again. "I'm not just helping you. I'm helping this place. Your hospital is dying." Monica blinked. "I know. I'm funding new equipment. Salaries. Staffing." Her mouth fell open. He nodded. "I don't want another nurse like you wondering how to pay rent after saving lives." Monica pressed the envelope to her chest. She couldn't speak. Her vision blurred. He stood slowly. Offered his hand. She took it. It was warm. Solid. Real. "Thank you," he said. Her voice cracked when she tried to answer. "Thank you." Monica Daniels stood in the middle of a hospital she barely recognized. The walls had been repainted a soft, warm white. The flickering lights were gone, replaced by energy-efficient fixtures that glowed evenly across the clean floors. New gurneys lined the walls, still smelling faintly of plastic and polish. Monitors beeped with quiet precision. Supplies were stocked. Every cabinet full. And the smell of mildew? Gone. Replaced by something Monica hadn't smelled here in years. Sterility, certainty, order, hope. It had been 6 weeks since that night. The night she'd pulled a man from the flood. The night she'd walked back into the hospital soaked, bleeding, and invisible. 6 weeks since she'd received the envelope that changed everything. His name was everywhere now. Alexander Grant. Philanthropist. CEO. Survivor. He gave an exclusive interview to a national outlet, where he told the story of the nurse who saved him when no one else would. He didn't mention the hospital by name. He didn't have to. By the time the segment aired, he'd already wired enough money to fund it for the next 5 years. Paid in full. And more. Staff who had been laid off. Rehired. Supplies that were always running low. Now arriving on schedule. Contractors moved through the building daily, replacing old vents, sealing roof leaks, installing new HVAC units. There was even talk of building a new wing. The Daniels Trauma Center. She'd laughed when she heard it. Then cried. And as for Monica, her life was no longer the same. Her debt was paid. Her rent? A year in advance. Her son had a new tablet, new shoes, and a smile that no longer held confusion when she disappeared for 2 days. She came home on time now. She tucked him in every night. She'd even cut back her hours for the first time in years. When the supervisor, now demoted, had confronted her about it, she'd smiled sweetly. "Hospitals got money now," she'd said. "Hire more nurses." She walked away without guilt. Monica was no longer invisible. She stood at the podium now, hands trembling slightly as the crowd gathered. Nurses in crisp uniforms. Doctors in fresh lab coats. Reporters with cameras. Patients with balloons. Alexander Grant stood just off stage, watching her quietly. She hadn't wanted this speech. But he said, "They need to hear from you." So here she was. She cleared her throat. Her voice echoed through the new intercom system. 6 weeks ago, I didn't think I'd be standing here. 6 weeks ago, I was sleeping on a break room floor in scrubs that hadn't fully dried from the night before. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nurses laughed the loudest. Monica smiled, then sobered. We were understaffed, underpaid, and overwhelmed. And still, we showed up. That's what nurses do. That's what we've always done. She looked out over the room. Tears glistened in more than a few eyes. She continued. Then came the flood. And in the middle of that disaster, I did what I was trained to do. I saved a life. I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't, because that life came back. She turned slightly to look at Alexander. He offered a small, respectful nod. She faced the crowd again. That life came back with a check, yes, but also with something we hadn't had in years: belief, support, respect. She took a breath. We didn't ask for this spotlight, but we earned it. Every single nurse, doctor, janitor, and tech who stayed through the storm. You earned this. And I hope this is just the beginning of something better for every hospital like ours. For every nurse who stays late. For every single mother who puts on scrubs and keeps going. I see you. Her voice broke slightly. I was you. She stepped back. Applause exploded. She blinked back tears. Afterward, Monica stood near the nurse's station as people filtered out. Alexander approached, no cameras following him now. Speech of the year, he said, smiling. She laughed softly. I was terrified. You didn't look it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching nurses go back to work. The hospital was still a hospital. People still needed care. That part never changed. Alexander cleared his throat. I meant it, you know. I want to keep helping. Monica tilted her head. You already did more than enough. He shook his head. No, you saved my life. I'm just catching up. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, why me? He looked thoughtful. I've been helped before. By people who expected something. Who wanted recognition. Or leverage. You didn't want anything. You went back to work like you'd just picked up a coffee, not a dying man. He looked at her, earnest. That's real. And I wanted to honor that. She didn't know what to say. So she said the only thing that mattered. Thank you. He nodded once, then turned and walked away. Later that evening, Monica walked to the staff lounge and took her old hoodie off the back of the chair where she used to nap. She folded it, put it in her bag. She wouldn't need it anymore. She had her own office now. A place to breathe. A place to rest. Her phone buzzed. A text from her son. Are you coming home in time to read tonight? She smiled. Yes, she typed. I'm coming home now. She walked out into the cool night. The sky was finally clear. No rain. No storm. Just peace. And for the first time in a long time, Monica Daniels felt whole. Sometimes the world doesn't notice the people who do the saving. Sometimes nurses are just names on a chart, faces behind a mask, hands that heal and move on. But every so often, life gives them back what they've quietly given to others. Monica Daniels didn't save a billionaire because he was rich. She didn't know his name. She only knew he was drowning. And when she dove into that water, she thought she was risking her life for someone she'd never see again. But what she didn't know was that this moment would rescue her, too. Because true heroism doesn't go unnoticed forever. And sometimes, when the world finally looks back, it sees exactly who was holding it up all along.